And we're live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen. Story number 1, I feel like I've ruined my husband's job and made his work difficult. It's all my fault, and it has to be the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I cheated on my husband. I gave in to temptation, the costly temptation that kept showing up to me. They say that whoever finds a wife finds it's a good thing, but I don't think I've been a good discovery to my husband. I'm pretty sure he hates me with every fiber in his body right now. Hate is not an exaggeration, it's probably an understatement. I can't even face my parents right now. What will I tell them? I cheated on my husband and might ruin his career and end his job. There's no way my parents would ever take me back. After that, my husband didn't just get revenge on me, he literally shattered me to pieces and made sure I regretted cheating on him. My husband didn't let it go at all. He has ruined me in so many ways that I cannot even begin to describe the level of pain I feel. He made sure that he left no stone unturned. I am only realizing now that I have been through a whole lot. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't deny that everything I've been through is as a result of some big mistakes I've made. My name is Faith, I'm 24 and I'm an entrepreneur. I've been married to my husband Leonard for the past 2 years. We dated for 2 years before we got married. I met my husband when I was 20. Leonard is quite older than me though. He's 27, Leonard is a banker and very smart. He's also very hardworking, which I'm really proud of. I finally realized the consequences of my actions, and that cheating on Leonard was the worst mistake I've ever made. I'm not going to lie about it. I know exactly how everything happened, and that's why I'm currently disgusted at myself. It's normal for human beings to do things consciously then regret it all later. I'm not different, and that's why I've come to share this big mistake with everyone. For the past 2 years of my marriage to Leonard, I've been myself, and we've always made sure our work doesn't affect our marriage. We're always there for each other. In fact, I've never met Leonard's boss until a few months ago. I've been to his workplace a couple of times, but I've never met anyone in particular. He never introduced me to anyone. I'm probably not the only one who doesn't know anyone there. 7 months ago, Leonard was invited to the end-of-year party his bank was holding. He asked me to be his +1, and I said yes right away. I didn't want to miss a chance to support him while we dressed up and chatted happily. I never would have guessed that the end-of-year party would be what caused my marriage to fall apart. I had no idea that I was walking right into a trap. If I had known, I would never have gone to that party if I'd known. Leonard bought me a nice dress and a pair of shoes in the same color as the party theme. I didn't really have anything appropriate in that color, so he bought me something to wear. My sister is an upcoming makeup artist, and she's the one that helped me with my makeup. That night, I felt like shouting her out, but I wanted to keep our identities a secret as much as possible. When Leonard and I arrived at the party, it was a lot to take in. I never really expected a bank's end-of-the-year party to be as extravagant as that one was. The mood was nice, and Leonard asked to properly introduce me to his colleagues. I'd only come to his workplace once before. After a while, I randomly greeted anyone I came across. I was excited to meet my husband's colleagues because he'd told me so much about them. He introduced me to his friends first. They were very nice and welcoming, and most of them even told me just how smart my husband is. I felt proud of my husband that day, because they were definitely telling the truth. Before Leonard could introduce me to his boss had to attend to something else. Leonard and I just went around testing the cocktails and tasting the delicious food. I even forgot about the person my husband wanted to introduce to me. But at some point during the party, his boss walked up to us and apologized for not being able to speak to us earlier. I didn't have a problem with it at all. Before I go on, I should say that my husband's boss isn't actually one of the owners of the bank. He's just the head of the department my husband works in. His name is Raphael, and he's 30 years old. When my husband introduced us, I didn't think much of it and didn't take much interest in him, but of course I noticed. He held my hand for a bit longer than expected, but that was the only thing I noticed that was unusual. He didn't even stand with us for long before he left. My husband always talked about his colleagues, but he never really mentioned his boss, so I figured they didn't have a relationship outside of work. We went on with the evening and had as much fun as I might have missed seeing Raphael after that, and I honestly don't remember if I did or not. Our first meeting at the party was pretty insignificant, and there wasn't anything particularly noteworthy that happened. The real drama started a few weeks later, after Leonard and I went home and talked about everything that had happened. At the party, that's how we usually acted after every event we were able to attend together. Days after the event, I forgot all about the meeting and the party itself. Life went on as usual, and I focused on my business as an entrepreneur. I find myself indulging in any business ideas I get. I like the concept of earning money and doing something productive. My best friend and I co-own a salon. I also own a salon, which is one of my most important businesses. One day I got an unexpected visitor. You might have guessed who it was. It was Raphael. I didn't even notice him at first because I was busy with a customer. My best friend came to meet me and said we had a customer who claims to know me. I got curious and decided to go see who she was talking about. I was surprised to see my husband's boss, Raphael, with a young lady. I had to do a double take because I couldn't believe my eyes. He introduced himself again and asked if I remembered him. I told him I did, and then he asked me to give him a minute of my time. I didn't know how to act because it felt awkward to be interacting with my husband's boss without him around. It was even more awkward because I only met him once, when he pulled me to the side to have a conversation. He told me that someone recommended him to come to my salon. I didn't really understand how he got the recommendation or how he knew I owned it. I got curious and asked him who directed him to my salon. He just told me that he'd always heard from my husband that I owned a salon. To be honest, the whole conversation was awkward because I didn't know how to address Raphael. After the awkward conversation and telling me how important business is, he told me that the young lady he'd brought with him was his niece and that she needed her hair done. He said that he'd been looking for a salon where he knew someone so that he could drop his niece off and be rest assured that she would stay and have her hair done. According to him, his niece was quite rebellious and often ran away when he left her at places. That's why he decided to bring her to my salon when he found out I had one. I found his explanation weird, but I needed to make money. I was happy to babysit a teenager. I agreed to make sure she stayed until he came to pick her up after work. That was the arrangement we made before he left. My best friend got his niece's hair done, while I focused on the customer I'd been working on before. It was barely 4 hours later when he came back to pick up his niece. He thanked me and said he was very grateful. I found his pleasantry weird because it was not a big deal that I let his niece stay at the salon for that long. Many people I'd done that before, and it'd never been a problem, but I accepted his thanks and told him it wasn't a big deal. I just put it down to coincidence. I didn't want to think about it too much because it wasn't a big deal. My best friend and I were actually happy because we felt like our salon was popular. I only realized that what I'd thought was a coincidence was actually something else when I got back home that day. I thought about telling my husband what had happened, but it wasn't a big deal. I always had customers at the salon, so I wasn't sure if I should tell my husband. After a while, I decided it would be best to tell him so that he could thank his boss on my behalf. I wanted to thank him properly for supporting me, so I decided to tell my husband. He didn't think it was a big deal either. He told me that he had mentioned that I owned a salon at work many times, and maybe that was why his boss decided to support me. He agreed to thank him. I asked him to come by again on my behalf, and that was it. I got on with my business as usual, but 2 weeks later, Raphael came by again. He came with his niece, and this time he said he wanted to get her hair washed. I thanked him for coming again, and then I washed his niece's hair. Unlike last time, he actually stayed until I washed her hair. I didn't expect him to stay until I finished working because I thought he'd be going to work. I was curious, but I didn't ask him. I didn't want to be nosy, and I was still very formal with him because he was my husband's boss. I just assumed that maybe he had the right to stay out of work for long because he was the boss of a particular department. After getting his niece's hair washed, I actually refused to collect money for it. Her hair wasn't even that dirty, and I did not have a lot of work to do. I thanked him for coming, and then offered to help his niece with her hair. He wasn't ready to accept my kind gesture, and said business was business, and there was no need to give him a discount. I said I was just doing it because his niece didn't have very dirty hair and I barely did anything. He finally accepted the gesture and left with his niece. After he left, My best friend actually sat me down and told me that I had a feeling he was just looking for an excuse to come see me. I took everything she said as a joke and said it was inappropriate. I even feel like a fool as I write this because I can't believe that something so inappropriate happened. The fact that I found it awkward and inappropriate when my best friend spoke about it, and then I went on to do the exact opposite of what I condemned her for, is pretty crazy. My best friend first started speaking about everything as a joke, and she did not really seem serious. I told her it was all a joke, and she didn't seem that serious when I got back home. I didn't tell my husband about the encounter because I didn't want him to think my best friend was making a joke about him just coming to see me and using his niece as an excuse. I didn't want to bring up unnecessary ideas in his head, so I decided to keep the information to myself. After that day, I didn't see Raphael for up to a month. To be honest, I even forgot what my best friend said to me, but when Raphael came to the salon, I finally understood what she meant. He didn't come with his niece. He came alone and asked to see me. I told him I was busy with work because there were lots of customers in the salon. I thought I'd be able to send him away because I felt uncomfortable. I told him there were too many customers in the salon and that I was very busy, but he offered to wait for me until I was less busy. I was surprised because I thought he'd be busy with work and wouldn't have time to wait. But he didn't mind waiting for me. I decided to see what would happen if I thought I'd waste his time and see if he'd eventually get hard and leave, but he didn't. He stayed until I'd finished with every single customer. My best friend told me to decide and said she was right. She told me to tread carefully and that she could already see that he was looking for something. Her words confirmed all the fear I had in me, and I knew that something was going on. I finally went to speak to him and asked him why he came to. The guy sensed that I wasn't in the best mood and noticed how awkward I was. I asked him why he'd come to my workplace like that, and he said he was sorry but it was important. I can't even begin to explain how awkward and shocked I felt as he stood in front of me and spoke. My best friend had already put ideas in my head, and I knew whatever was going on in his head couldn't be good. He told me that he could. He said he'd been thinking about me ever since he saw me at the party when my husband introduced us. He said he'd started looking for ways to meet me again, which is why you asked around until you found out where my salon was. When he started speaking, I tried to end the conversation and act like I wasn't listening to him. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and make him correct his words in case he'd made a mistake, but he refused. He was really confident and didn't change his mind. I felt really weird and didn't know what to say. It was the first time another man had spoken to me like that since I got married. It made me even more uncomfortable because the person talking to me like that was my husband's boss. I told him it was inappropriate for him to speak to me like that. I said I'd pretend. I didn't hear everything he said and told him I'd pretend he'd never come into the salon. I didn't want to disrespect my husband, but I ended up disrespecting myself. Even after what I said, Raphael didn't leave. I asked him to leave politely, but he refused. I only got him to leave when I threatened to call my husband. He left straight away, but he didn't take his business card, even though it was all pretty surprising and felt like a bad dream. I knew there was no good that could come of entertaining Raphael. He was just infatuated and wanted to use me as a way of entertaining himself. I'd seen lots of movies about situations like this, and I didn't want to fall prey to it. That's why it hurts me the most now that I ended up falling prey to it. After all my attempts to resist, I'm not sure how to tell you what I did when I got home that day. I know I'll be judged and called names, and I honestly think I deserve it. I didn't tell Leonard what happened at the salon because I knew it would raise his suspicions. I found it embarrassing and awkward, and I didn't want him to have a bad working environment. That's when I realized that Raphael knew I'd never tell Leonard what happened because he was Leonard's boss at work. He knew I'd try to protect Leonard, and that's why he was so confident. I don't want to go into too much detail, so I'll give you the main points. After Raphael told me what he wanted, he kept coming to the salon every week. Even my best friend noticed. She advised me to talk to Leonard about it, but I refused. I chose to keep quiet about it. Maybe I actually liked the way he kept coming to the salon. I'm ashamed of myself because I refused to tell Leonard about any of it. I just kept entertaining the visits and pretending like I did not notice any of it. My best friend warned me several times, but I refused to listen to her. So guys, Raphael did not just come empty-handed. He kept coming with gifts and other things. I don't know why or how they decided to be consistent. Less than a month after he started coming to the salon consistently, I started making conversation with him because I also work on the weekends at the salon. Raphael was able to come to see me on the weekend because he wasn't at work. Whenever he came over, we would spend hours chatting about random things. I didn't really know what I was doing. I can't deny that I kept indulging him, even after he started visiting and I started indulging him. He started inviting me over to his house, and I went. I never told my husband, and he noticed something was up. I'm very ashamed of myself. I felt really ashamed of myself. I couldn't believe I'd stooped so low. It was the only one of those visits to Raphael's house that things got to another stage. That was when I officially cheated on my husband. As soon as it happened, I finally got my senses back and ran out of his house. I was so disgusted with myself that I took several showers after getting home. When I got home, I felt like I'd done something really wrong. I cheated on my husband with his boss. There was nothing I could say to justify it, and I knew I'd got what I deserved after the incident at Raphael's house. I stopped going to the salon for almost a month, blocked his number and I tried to avoid anything to do with him. I didn't even let my husband touch me for days because I felt so guilty. It was awful, but I think I deserved everything. The guilt I felt was just the tip of the iceberg. The revenge my husband took was the worst. He didn't let me go easily and got revenge. I should have known better. My marriage was good for a long time, and there was nothing wrong with it. I kept asking myself why I did what I did. I don't know what led me to do it. I held out for a long time and didn't want to give in, but I ended up giving in, even when he started coming to the salon. I kept telling myself it was just a phase and I was looking for a bit of fun. But now I know I was making excuses to cheat on my husband. I gave in slowly without even realizing it. I acted like it was just a phase, and I was just looking for a bit of fun, but I was lying to myself. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know where it would end up. I was entertaining a man who told me he had feelings for me. I'm not a child. I knew there was something he wanted from me. I gave it to him at the detriment of my marriage. I was respecting and loyal to my husband. Even though I was feeling guilty and I never thought my husband was aware of everything that was going on. I thought I was keeping it from him. I thought he'd only find out when I finally told him the truth. I'll be completely honest because I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. If I'm asked whether I planned on telling my husband the truth, I'll say that I never thought of it. I knew that the truth would eventually come out one way or another, but I never really had the courage to tell him. That's why I know that I deserved everything you did to me. I kept lying to his face and pretending like everything was okay. It's even more scary that my husband knew this and found out on his own that I cheated on him with his boss. If you are wondering how he knew and how I found out that he was aware, I'll tell you now. I remember. I said at the start of this post that my husband is a very smart person. I meant every word. He's very smart and attentive towards his environment. There is no way you can hide anything from him. He notices every little detail. That's how he discovered that something was wrong exactly 2 months ago. I got the shock of my life when Leonard did something very outrageous. As I told you all, my husband is a banker, so it makes sense that I save my money there. He also does my taxes and handles all my financial matters. I just thoughtlessly made sure he was in charge of everything. He even helps me save. When I first got married, I was a very reckless spender. I'm not saying I earned a lot of money. My income was normal, but I spent like there was no tomorrow. I bought everything I saw. When I married my husband, he started teaching me the art of saving. He taught me about finances and how to be a better entrepreneur. His advice really helped me, so I started making him in charge of most things regarding my taxes and savings. Some people might think I was stupid, but there were even times when I would keep my money with him in case I was tempted to spend it. I never worried because he had his own money and he always returned it to me when I really needed it. Sometimes he would even reward me with some money when I saved a lot of money. I never imagined that the mutual trust we had would end up making me lose everything. I suddenly got a huge debit. As I said, I'm an entrepreneur, so most of the money from my business is saved in the bank. My husband knows my PIN, And he's even the one in charge of most of my finances. As I said, he was in charge of most of my finances. Sometimes I saved money with him, and it was kept in his bank account on that particular day. All my money was gone. There was literally nothing left for me. It felt like I was saying, "Stars, guys." I was at the salon and I practically bolted out and ran home. I didn't need a seer to tell me what had happened to my money. There was only one person who knew my PIN and was in charge. I knew that it had to be my husband who took the money. I was right. When I got home, he wasn't there, so I had to wait for him to come back. When he did, I asked him what had happened to my money. That's when he slapped me hard across the face. I was scared. I could see the rage and anger in his eyes. I'll never forget it. He gave a little shake of his head and said that I was the worst decision he'd ever made. Those words hit me hard. I don't know if I can ever fully describe the hatred I saw in his eyes. Leonard looked at me like I was disgusting. He said I was foolish and stupid. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. I knew there was nothing I could say that would make sense. He told me he'd known I was cheating on him. He said I was dumb for thinking I could mess with him and get away with it. I'd never seen Leonard so angry. I'd never believed he'd be so upset. I was pretty shocked that he'd found out I was cheating on him. He told me how he'd suspected something was up when I told him his boss had visited my salon. Apparently, he wasn't on good terms with his boss, so when he heard that his boss came to my salon, he knew something was up. But he didn't tell me. He'd hired someone to keep an eye on me, and that person has been giving him reports of everything. I had been keeping up with Raphael even up to the day I followed him to his house. Leonard was aware of it. I was very shocked and asked him why he never confronted me. He told me that he preferred to keep me in the dark until he got his revenge. I asked him why he never tried to stop me, even before Raphael and I had taken things to the next level. Leonard told me that he didn't care what I ended up doing. He wanted to know what I would do. He still wanted me to be loyal to him, and he got his answer. He told me that all the money I'd saved with him and the money in his bank was now his. I couldn't believe my ears. Leonard wasn't ready to change his mind, even after I begged. My best friend's money was also in his bank, and I knew that she would soon ask for it. It felt like the whole world had suddenly stopped. And I was in the midst of a lot of chaos before I could even get my thoughts together. Leonard threw the divorce papers on the table. I could see that he had already signed them. There was nothing I could do, and I accepted the consequences of my actions. I asked Leonard to forgive me, and that I was very sorry for everything I did to him, but Leonard told me that he would never forgive me. As if all that was not enough, he asked me to leave the house immediately. I had nowhere to go. I was broke, but he didn't care. I'd been going through a lot that day. I asked him what would happen at his workplace. Leonard looked me in the eye and told me that he wasn't going to do anything about it. He said I wasn't worth losing his job over. He told me that he'd still go to work and pretend like his boss didn't do anything. But I knew that Leonard was just bluffing. I knew that he was still going to do something. I'm worried that his career is going to suffer because of me. Men have egos and they won't let something like this go. I feel really bad, and I know that I am to blame. I already feel enough guilt, and I don't think I'll be able to handle it if he loses his job because of me. Leonard made it clear that I was just a stupid mistake. That was all Leonard said to me before he kicked me out of the house. It's been 2 months now, and I am now wallowing in my own self. I'm surprised that Raphael never contacted me, given that I'm sure he heard about what happened. The rumors spread like wildfire, and I'm sure everyone in our city knows the truth. It's clear to me now that I was just a pawn in his game. He had issues with my husband at work and decided to use me to get on my husband's nerves. I was foolish enough to fall for it. I ended up as the collateral damage. I signed the divorce papers, and our divorce is still in process. I don't know how I'm going to survive the next few weeks, but I guess I'll survive, just like I've survived for the past 2 months. I don't know what to do. I have a court hearing in a few minutes. I'll leave it there for now. I'll provide an update after the divorce is finalized. I'm now a divorced woman. I'm still struggling to believe that my marriage didn't last 3 years. I'm also struggling to believe that I fell prey to so many things. I'm miserable. Reddit, I don't know how to get my life back together. As I thought they would be, the comments were just as outrageous as the situation itself. You all didn't disappoint. I'm still thankful for the comments, because they've helped me work on myself, even though it's been difficult. The divorce was finalized a few days ago, and since there are no children involved, there was less drama. I was awarded alimony, but it was cut down to the minimum. I know it sounds like I'm being greedy, but I had to do what I had to do. Leonard took every cent and penny that belonged to me. I'm broke, and I even owe my best friend a lot of money. I tried taking up the case in court, but I lost even before the case began. I didn't have the money to hire a lawyer, so I had to. My parents advised me to just let it go. They're devastated and don't want to talk to me. The only person who's been a commodity is my best friend. She keeps reminding me of her money, and she's also very angry with me, but she's been nice enough to let me stay with her. I discovered that there's been a bit of drama at Leonard's workplace. It seems that Leonard already had a disagreement with his boss, who isn't the bank's owner, but is in charge of Leonard's department. It's possible that Leonard's boss tried to harm his career, as I'd feared. However, Leonard is still working at the bank, which makes me feel even worse about the situation. Leonard and I are trying to keep things cordial at work, and nothing really changed for us. But I'm here suffering a lot because of the decision we made. The only difference is that Raphael isn't at the receiving end of all the drama. I don't think there's anything that could ever describe the level of self. I feel pretty bad right now, but I think I'd hate myself if I didn't feel guilty. I'm focusing on my business right now so I can pay my best friend back. I'll stop the update, guys. That's all that's been happening in my life. I'm thankful that I started this journey and decided to share my story. Thanks for listening to the music.